Excellent. Hey. Just a vacuous comment actually before I do a little introduction to Paul. Every time that woman says recording in progress, I think, well, has anybody ever seen her? Does anybody know what she looks like? Who is this person? Omnipresent.
She's the mystical participant.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming along this afternoon or this morning for some of you. Very early morning for some of you, of course. So we have with us today Paul Sirat. And I first met Paul some years ago. I haven't actually. When was it, Paul? Was it 2018?
Must be about 2016, I think, something like that. 2017.
Right. Yeah.
It was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. So Paul was fairly fresh from really finding that the management was rolling up its sleeves and getting the toolkit out in his life. Yeah. And he attended a meeting, and a mutual, as it turns out, a mutual contact of ours basically approached Paul and said, I recognize that energy that's with you. That's Merlin. I know who you should talk to. Basically, Paul was pointed in my direction, and we did some mentoring together. It was very, very interesting, to say the least. Paul Paul, in his previous life, in this incarnation, was an IT director, a very deeply embedded corporate person, which is so removed from where he finds himself today. And really, when we met, Paul was in that process of change and shift and trying to find his feet. And I will actually, in a sec, at the end of this intro, which won't go on for much longer, I actually will just read out a line that Paul has on his LinkedIn profile about his IT directorship, because I think it's absolutely hilarious, because it is also so appropriate for your current position, Paul. But I'll read that in a minute. So basically what I was saying was that I still feel that Paul is finding his feet, like a lot of people at the moment. When they get thrown very hugely from an existing and stable life into a very, very different position, where the management is basically saying, right, this is where you're going now. This is what you should be doing. This is who you are. It's very unsettling. And I think Paul gave a talk, a longer version of the talk that he's going to give to us today. He gave a version of this talk at an event run by Adrian last summer, that Adrian called Earth Energies Reconnected, which was a gathering in Wiltshire over here in the UK. And Adrian has a knack of basically selecting people and finding people that aren't really quite ready themselves to stand up on the platform and be counted. But Adrian kind of goes, oh, that's really interesting. You do this talk. And I think Paul felt maybe a little bit like that. So before I hand over to Paul, I'm just going to read this sentence because I think this is hilarious. Paul Sirat is an accomplished transformation/IT director with a strategic, visionary, and transformational mindset, able to pioneer change where and when it is required. Now, that's your corporate sentence for your corporate IT director.
Yeah.
But you know what, Paul?
I'm realizing that now as you say it.
That's you. That's you right now.
Yes, no, you're fair point. Fair point.
I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to miss out just one word or two words. Accomplished transformation with a strategic, visionary, and transformational mindset, able to pioneer change where and when it is required. You did that in the corporate world, and now you can do that for everybody else as well. So no pressure. Right. Good man. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very much new on the scene with this group, and I appreciate this. And yes, I've been public speaking for 30 years in that corporate world, so I'm familiar with technology, standing on the stage, and everything else. And it was really nice to have Adrian give me that opportunity. He approached the Zoom Earth Energies group, and they all said, "You've got to have Paul doing this." So it was a nice point to take that step. And yeah, Tim's absolutely right. My journey's been really interesting, and Tim's been fundamental in many components of that. And one of them was becoming the geomancer. He literally said, I was coming up for a course one weekend anyway, and he said, well, come up a few days beforehand. I'm going to sit you down with Adrian's Heal Your Home book, and we're going to go through it. So I literally went up there a couple of days early, and we sat down in his house and just went through the whole book as he taught me the basics of geomancy. But what I now know, that was obviously a hidden something within me. We were in Mexico a couple of years ago, going to Chichen Itza, and told by everyone we were going to go and meet a shaman, a jungle shaman. And my then partner was saying, well, I don't want you seen. I don't want my corporate NASDAQ people knowing you do all this weird stuff. And you need to stand at the back and hide, sort of thing. So I did that. And then the shaman pulled 4 people out, and I thought, well, it can't be me. It's not this. It's not that. I can't be this person. And then he stops and says, I need to call the true shaman out who's holding the energy for all 50 of you. And he hoiks me out. And that's when I got the sort of real kick up the backside to say, you've got to embrace this. You can't ignore this now. And Tim's right. Yeah, the stuff I've been put into, the things I've done, defy even the management books, defy doctors. You know, when you do a healing on someone and they physically change, or you do a healing on a house, and as you touch into the trauma of the World War II bomb, the house shakes like an earthquake until you release the trauma. But if you think about trauma and what animals do, they shake to get rid of it. So why wouldn't a house do it? It's conscious. That's the thing to try and understand with everything that we're doing. So that's really part of the key of what we've done within the Earth Energies stuff, is trying to get everyone to understand everything's conscious. They don't always have self-realization like we do, but there's stuff there. So this is what the talk's really about. So I'll throw straight into it. I'm absolutely happy to have questions as and when if something comes up. I'm very conscious that some of this is Britain bound, not sort of global, but I think some of the themes that you'll see, you can layer into what you're picking up or what you're seeing. You know, I know very much in the Americas, probably 80 to 90% of all your First Nation stuff has been removed. We're lucky that we probably have about 20 to 30%, but it's probably a bit more static, because there's probably a degree of First Nation people, if you want to say the Celts, etc., still within our society, who are very much there. You talk of the pagans, etc. Those groups still exist, and they fight very hard to keep that culture going. But then there's all sorts of other things. So let me just try and get this to work. Keynote, that one. Usual case of privacy is not working. Hang on a second. This is the one thing I didn't catch on. Right. Zoom. Screen share. Sorry, Tim, can you carry on just chatting a minute while I just try and sort this out? There's a security issue, which I didn't realise. I don't normally use this laptop, and my desktop was deciding to be a bit funny.
Don't worry, we've probably got gremlins coming to visit. It's fine. It's the usual thing, really, isn't it? What was I doing yesterday? Can't remember. But there was a classic. Oh yes, well I did a podcast interview recently with somebody, and there was basically gremlins that took us 40 minutes late to start. So nothing unusual. But hopefully, what Paul's going to talk about is really some of the fundamental shifts of perception in Earth energy and perceptions of Earth energy within the BSD, so the British Society of Dowsers. I don't think, Dawn, you'll know a bit more about this. I don't know that there's actually much interaction kind of on an official level between the BSD and the ASD, is there?
There isn't. No, there isn't. So when ASD, the American Society of Dosers, yeah, there's nothing official. There's definitely some relationship with the French FSD, I guess. They're the oldest actually dosing society in the world. British is the second, and then hopefully there'll be some alignment with the Canadian Society soon.
Right. I don't think I even knew there was a French Society of Dowsers. Isn't that? Yeah. Okay. That's quite interesting, actually, if there is. Yeah. If you can just send me a link to their website, I guess I can Google it. But because there are a number of people that have asked me that live in France about, you know, dowsing sort of groups, but I never mentioned that one. So.
Oh, come on.
Oh, so Paul disappeared.
No, it's still funny. I might have to change machines, so just give me a second. Quit and reopen. Oh, it's going to I have to come out of Zoom and come back in again, so I'll be back in a second.
That's all right. Okay, we'll see how that goes. Right, so any admin that I've got, let me just cover that off. Affiliate scheme, we put through some work to a couple of you this month, last month, sorry, November. December is going to be very, very quiet. I can't see anything coming through now for any of the affiliates. We will be starting the membership payment scheme in January. So Dawn and I will sort out the admin of that. That'll probably happen. So you'll get an email asking if you want to join the network as a member. At some point early in January. It's not going to be straight away, not unless Dawn is particularly efficient, but I think it's coming from me. So I'm telling you now, it won't be straight away in January, but at some point early-ish January, you'll get a mail about it. And it's you know, completely up to you whether you want to join the network or not. And we.
It's amazing. That's all I can say.
I think I was underselling that there, wasn't I? I was sort of underselling. Yeah, we have actually got some really quite interesting speakers coming. And we will be doing, I think February is the first time we'll do one. We will have a general sort of open forum, open chit chat, open conversation about what do you want, and where are you? You know, where are you with your businesses? Where are you personally with the energy of the management and what's happening in your world? So we're going to every now and again, every quarter, we're thinking we'll have an open sort of forum for discussion and assistance. And what we actually want to do in the future is to have it very obvious so that those that are more experienced house healers or more experienced well-being practitioners are actually available for, you know, a little bit more of a formal kind of consultation or mentoring type, you know, umbrella within the network, so that everybody feels that they have actually got a place to go to ask questions of people that you know are well, we'll give you good quality advice. That's really the bottom line, I suppose. That's what we're really after. How are you getting on there, Paul?
Hopefully all sorted. So if everyone's happy, I will proceed.
We'll give that a go, shall we? Right.
Yeah, okay. It's definitely looking different from this side of things.
Hey, there you go.
Right, so we'll go back to the first slide and play. Brilliant. And this stone face actually does exist. It's near Uffington in England, near Oxfordshire. I take people to see him. He does move. He tends to go between different woods. So that's rather an interesting one. So what I'm going to take you through is several components within the Earth Energies Zoom group that we have. And that group actually is evolving at the moment. We have a meeting tomorrow where we're discussing what we should do and how we should take that forwards. But the thing to understand, it's not a group that's closed. It's an open group, and it's a group that we invite other people to bring their information to share. So in a lot of senses, everyone on this call is more than welcome to join it, because what we have in the UK will be replicated. There's also things in different countries that will be different to us that may help us shape our thoughts and ideas and open our minds, because the world is a fascinating place. So the Zoom group itself, it's of like-minded people. We share a passion and interest, and I'll say Earth Energies, But actually, we've been stepping right outside some of that. One of the last talks was on orbs, and we've been talking about the galactic network and stuff. So it's a real discussion forum. There aren't really any boundaries there. It's collaboration, direction, challenge, certainly, a degree of humor. And people bring their ideas and thoughts and even special projects. People have got little projects, and we'll go through some of those in a minute. One of the things we're trying to do is bring order to chaos. We're trying to create sort of ideas of record capture, how we do investigation. The standardization of terminology is a biggie, because everyone goes, oh, ley lines, and we know they're not ley lines. And we're trying to create things like a knowledge base and whatever. But these are ideas that need to advance, because, again, like Tim was saying, we're all having different experiences, and we need to think of a way of bringing that together. And that has been done in the past, but it hasn't been kept up to date. And there are a lot of magazines that have fallen by the wayside that have got information, and there's lots of other older people who've got information who are now going to Spirit, etc. And that information is not being captured. And it isn't just about writing a book anymore. So this is what we're trying to do, is find ways we can collate it, make it available to everybody. So what I'm going to flick through here is we did an element of explaining to people to get everyone up to a baseline of what Earth energies are, grids, etc. So I've left them in the slide deck so that you can have the slide deck and share it amongst yourselves. And maybe things trying to understand the Hartmann grid or the Curry grid, you may not have come across this before. There's some basic information here, the Schumann resonance and everything else. So I'll skip through these, and I'll go to what is effectively the subject topics that we were discussing. So these are the things, these are the groups that have, or the topics and ideas that have been brought to the group over the last year to 18 months. Gretna is a location which is known in the UK for marriages, basically. It's just on the other side of the border into Scotland, and the rules there were very different to England. So everyone knows about Gretna Green and going eloping and marrying. But actually what they didn't know is about the earth energies that were consolidating there, and someone starting to build a massive statue, and how that was affecting the earth energies. And probably in a lot of senses, the statue is being created because of the earth energies. What happens at energy nodes, pictograms, etc., how the eclipses affect the earth energies. And there was a talk last month, which I sadly missed, about the recent eclipses, and about 5 or 6 of the dowsers were measuring how earth energy lays were changing frequency, widths, etc., as the eclipse passed. And I think you were all actually had the eclipse visible to you. We didn't. The different types of line types, we have a dowser here who's written a book on it, Rory Duff, and he has a load of classifications, and they're very good classifications, but are they the same ones globally? Who knows? So what we are trying to try and understand is all the different types of energy lays that there are, and even what creates them, be they sound, be they electromagnetic, be they water, these sort of things. Trying to create some simplified theories. Energy drains and sinkholes. You may have come across these when you're doing geomants work on houses or something. These are like plugs where energy just disappears, or sinkholes. And we've even had 1 or 2 places where we call null points, where there just is nothing at all. So you douse it, and yes, you can see a physical feature, but there is no energy whatsoever. And those are, I've come across 1 or 2 of those before. Movement of energy features and what happens. Symbology and symbols in the landscape. And again, that's something that we're picking up a lot. And 1 or 2 of the earth energy guys and girls actually can see energy, and they've been seeing energy for 20 plus years. And so what they've been bringing to the party is another view other than just dowsing, for instance. And I use dowsing, but dowsing isn't just by rods or whatever else. A lot of people we use for feel with our hands or within our bodies, or pendulums, or it's really that innate ability that we have. We have crop circles and their effects, and that's a big thing over here. I'm not sure if you have them in America or elsewhere in the globe. I'm sure they are happening, but we seem to have a very clear areas, sort of Oxfordshire, Berkshire, Wiltshire, which is like the centre of England, around sort of Avebury, Stonehenge area, where these are happening. And some of them clearly are man-made and they're done as a spoof, but other ones are absolutely incredible, and the energy's there, very dowsable. And one of the subjects was actually on the galactic effects on Earth energies, and Birkeland currents and the electromagnetic universe. And some of you may have heard of the what's the project called? We'll come on to that. It's a Thunderbolt project. So that's something you may want to have a look at as well, because that's touching on a lot of what we're doing. So we're trying to create a connection with them and quantum physics and all the other elements. So one of the subjects we look at very detailed is energy line structures. And a lot of these probably very familiar to you from various books, various individuals over the last 30, 40 years. But what's become very clear to us is that the mindset was two-dimensional. So they were looking on the land and they were finding this banding and therefore creating a classification from the banding. But what they weren't doing was dowsing in the 3, the 4, the 5th dimension to try and understand more about what was actually happening. And yes, in some structures you're seeing the positive and negative, or the energy itself is moving different directions. But when you start to look at it and you apply, say, the technology bent that I have, working in telecommunications and IT for a long while, and you start looking at the cable in the 3D, then you start to the lines in a 3D, you start to understand it's potentially a cable. And what you're actually picking up as you're doing the bands is the sheaths. So when you start back measuring it above the ground at different heights, you'll find the banding changes, because you're actually literally picking up a circular cable. And if you look at this picture on the left-hand side, it looks very much like an eye, and you'll see that theory come up a bit later on. And one of the other things we found is that quite often with some of these bandings, if you start to look at them in the 3-dimensional, had another structure going over the top of them, like a bind, holding them together. So again, there was another layer of energy that was going on. Now, it could be that 30, 40 years ago, all there was banding, and it was the first layer of something being created. And where we have evolved to now could be that the Earth has changed, because the only constant we know about is change, and it's now created cabling. It could have been that they were there thousands of years ago and then got destroyed, and you'll see one of those theories a bit later on as well. So you've got an example here of an undersea cable. I used to work for WorldCom and spent 5 years managing a lot of this telecommunications centers and data streams around the world. And when you start to look at it from this point of view, you've got the helix going around the cable. If you look at the data cable from an undersea cable, which is a really good analogy for an Earth energy lay, for instance, you've got the data running down the center and a number of sheaths. Now, if you cut that across, there's your banding. And again, what we're trying to understand actually is these Earth energy lays just about an electrical current, or they actually something about data and more and more and more. So we're really opening some really interesting conversations now to try and understand the marvel of Gaia and outside of Gaia, because again, we're now starting to touch the electric universe in some of the stuff that we do. And it's interesting, one of the subjects that actually came out of Facebook, one of the team, Mayor Forder, she was it Mayor? No, was looking at a Facebook post and came across this discussion about planetary lines and talking about a planetary line that was going through the UK. And she realised that one of the locations was close to her, which was Clumber Park in Worksop. So she went there and did her own mini project and discovered that the Earth energy lays were starting to go through the church, and we're finding a relationship between churches, what we call sacred land over here, and Earth energy lays and water energy lays, etc., coalescing at these locations. And then one of the things she actually did was measure through time how the energy lines were moving, and they were picking up different trees every hour as they went in this sort of arc, which was quite an interesting thing. So when we started to look at the line, again, you've got that cable element when you do the banding, but what we actually found with the boundings, that they were relating to different planets. Why? We don't know yet. That's still another discussion and conversation to have. But we've also found that there are different types of planetary lines. So there's a Pluto line, a Neptune line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just something that we are just starting to look at and try and understand. But it's now on everybody's radar. So it's starting, what we're trying to create is a set of questions when you find something. If we can get a formulation of questions, then we can start to build a bigger picture, which is why we need a knowledge base. This is why we need to have this shared group in a lot of senses, because there's so many things we're finding all over the place. Another project that Alison picked up was, for some reason, she was drawn to octagons. She noticed there's lots of octagons in our environment, primarily war memorials that are at churches, but they're around everywhere initially. And she started to dowse them and started to find energy patterns. And these energy patterns, both on the horizontal and on the vertical, and they all seem to be in strange locations, strange places. And as she started to explore this, she started to find that buildings that had that shape were also generating, for want of a better word, energy patterns, or were they attracting an energy pattern from the energy lays that were underneath, or are they on certain points in the land or on certain points of sacred land or whatever else, And this building here is what we would call a toll house. So this is something from the 1700s where they would charge people money to go down the road that they'd just built. So it was partly a control thing, but it was also a revenue thing, because we had this new thing called a road, and carts and horses and stuff will get moving onto the roads and moving transport and people around. Another element which we've really started to explore is energy in the natural world. And I'm sure what we're just about to discuss here will really fit into a lot of what you're doing over here. First thing is obviously the relationship of water. Not everyone really appreciates there's actually two types of water on the planet. There's what we call aquifer water, which is the aerial process from clouds to rain to streams and springs and everything else. So it goes through that cycle. But we call that airborne in a lot of senses. But and it's what ends up in our taps over here, and it's dead and it's horrible and put loads of pollutants into it and everything else. But there's another one which we call primary water, which is actually created by Mother Earth under the ground. So when you're digging a mine, say in Nevada, and you're 5,000 feet down doing something, and you're suddenly hearing this rushing of a river going past, that's primary water. Those are the underground streams and rivers that Mother Earth actually has. So when they actually talk about water shortages on the planet, they're just trying to not tell you the truth, because the actual primary water there is so much water underneath it, and it's a question of reaching it. I think there's a borehole in Russia, I think it's like 9 kilometers down, and they've hit primary water. So that just shows you it's a long way, but it's there. But I know in some of the mines in America, it's 1,000 feet where they've been digging down into the Rockies, and they're hitting this water. And we obviously, as geomancers and earth energy workers, we know about water lines and how they create the energies underneath. We obviously have springs and what we call blind springs, and I think you have the same term over there, where actually the water is under a syncline. What is a syncline? I can never remember my geology, where it's capped. And then we obviously have wells as well. So remember the bit about springs and wells, because this will really come into its own in the next part. When these earth energy lays meet, we still have a debate in the group. Is it a marriage or a clash? When the earth energy lays come together, are they coming together in unison because they want to and they create the vortex above, or is it because they're clashing and creating the vortex above? And what we've seen with a very clear relationship between the trees, for instance, and these vortices. You can see here these two trees are twisting different ways because of the different type of energy vortex that's underneath, fully dowsable. And we know these vortices create the sacred sites. If you look at all the sites, we go back to those first slides and you'll see the various grids, the Benker grid, etc. These are based on primary nodes, primary vortices that are coming. And where you see a church, for want of a better word, that's actually taken over what was once a pre-sacred site that the Druids or the First Nation people knew about, and was reappropriated for this new thing called religion, from control. But when you start to actually explore these sacred sites, you start to understand about the holy wells, the springs, the vortices, etc. And something which you may not have heard of called beacon trees. So a beacon tree is really, really important. And I do a separate talk on trees to try and help people understand. We have a symbiotic relationship with trees between the oxygen and carbon dioxide cycle. What people don't realize is there's a second symbiotic relationship, which is to do with energy. Certain trees take the energy from the earth energy layers and the water energy layers underneath and broadcast it out. So they create the prana that keeps us going in a lot of senses. If we didn't have trees, one, we wouldn't have oxygen, two, we wouldn't have the energy to exist. So they're really important. So when you look here, they're acting like mobile phone masts, for want of a better word. There is a set of sort of maths that we have with them. Every tree is different, but we work on a basis of a height. So a height of a tree is from the uppermost branch to the lowest point of the root. And then what we've found when we've looked at all these beacon trees, and you can dowse them in a lot of senses, if you get in tuned with the trees and the tree dryads, they'll tell you where they are. You'll feel them. We find that the vortex is 36 heights of the tree above ground, but underneath ground, this can be hundreds of heights. So they are very powerful energy nodes in their own right. Quite often they are a physical tree, but sometimes they've been removed. And there usually is, again, a symbiotic relationship between the tree and a well or a spring. So if you find a beacon tree, within several hundred yards, you will find a spring or a well. Why? We're not sure yet, but it's very clearly there. And every tree that we're finding that relationship. The energy field as well is both toroidal, which we'll go into, but works on the diurnal cycle. So toroidal is the donut, basically, which you'll see. But the diurnal cycle is the cycle of the sun as it goes through the day. So we find that when the sun is at its maximum height, the energy field is at its maximum. And it's like breathing. It goes in and out. As the sun moves, it goes in and out. This tree here is an interesting tree because it's right in the center of Bristol. Was very lonely, very upset when we went and had a conversation with it. And it had stopped really working. But it was a fascinating tree. Now, once we've rebuilt the relationship with the well that was just a couple of hundred yards away in someone's garden and got the elemental beings to come back to the tree, it's thriving. And the whole area is completely changing. Which is really interesting because we're not taught any of this. This is stuff that we've lost. So this is how the donut works. It rotates and it goes out, and it literally is breathing all the time. And even on the call, it was really funny when we were discussing this, and I brought this subject to the Earth Energies team. One of the team went, "Well, hang on a minute. I've got a spring in the garden," and I managed to tune in. And I said, "Yeah, that's the beacon. There's a beacon tree near where you are." And then I sort of went, "It's in your house." And she went, "Yeah, it is." And she realized where it was. And she's got actually an oak tree coffee table right over the top of where the beacon tree used to be. So her intuitive basis was already ahead of what she actually knew, because she put the tree there, she knew about it, she sensed it, and she's the most incredible dowser in her own right. So, and she's been working with trees now for the last couple of years. Now, where I used to live when I was first engaged with Tim is a place called Rooksmoor, and this is a very special house and place there. But I'm doing this more to illustrate the power that these trees can have. So what we found with this tree, that it was centered over 12 water energy lines. It was a vertical vortex of 36 heights above, but 432 heights below. And when we were inquiring on the site, there were 6 previous beacon trees here going back sort of 7,000 to 8,000 years. And of course, there's a holy well, which was in the house. So when we start to look at the tree here, which is right in the center, we started to map out the energy lays that were going there. And Gordon Field was doing this work. He's an amazing tree dowser down in Somerset. And he opened my eyes initially to trees, although I had already been having conversations with trees, which sort of blew my mind when I started going down this journey, because I didn't think trees could talk. I didn't know anything could talk or you could connect. So we got an idea of how powerful this tree was, and we already had an idea of how sacred this valley was. And where this tree is, actually, there was a stone circle. And the first stone circle was built 100,000 years ago, and then that was destroyed in the Great Deluge in 13,000 BC, and then another one built 10,000 years ago. So it was a very sacred site, well against everything that we understood as history, because we're all taught everyone was in the Stone Age before 10,000 BC. But that's the narrative they want you all to know. So as we start from the Earth Energies point of view in the Zoom talk, we've actually also been starting to challenge the history that we understand. So it's the tendrils from this Zoom team has been going in all sorts of extraordinary places. So when you now look at this as the tree, now you marry it to look at all the beacon trees in and around Stroud in England, you can see the main tree in the center, and it's got an energy field of about a mile across to 1.5 miles. And all the other trees are quite small. And Gordon reckons this is probably the most powerful tree that he's ever come across, this yew tree. But when you think about the sacred nature of the land and what was going on there, you're not surprised. But it's these sort of things that are hidden in plain sight as well, because when I bought the house, I wasn't even walking this path. It took 10 years for the universe kept kicking me up the backside until I sort of woke up and understood the Merlin energy that was there and what I was and everything else. And so as we now go in the Zoom group, one of the things we always look out for when we're dowsing now, is there a beacon tree? Is there a well? These are the questions we started asking to try and understand and help build the map on the trees themselves. So it's a fascinating element. Now, I talked to you about the cables and eyes, and one of the guys for 30 years in Avebury had been seeing eyes in the etheric in the ditch, but he couldn't understand what it was about, and he couldn't relate it to anything. And this is his map that he drew sort of 20 plus years ago, on various energy structures in the etheric that he was identifying. And I don't know if any of you know Avebury at all, but you've got effectively an outer circle with a very big ditch, and then 2 inner circles. So the one with the stripes in the middle, that's what we call the moon circle and moon cove. And the one that's partly down at the bottom is the sun. And I'll talk about the sun one in a minute, because that has a massive bearing on the Thunderbolt project. So we as a group actually met up. The first time we all got together, we decided we were going to go to Avebury, and whoever could come along would join us. And we had a fantastic day dowsing. David taught a number of us to see energy. I'm still pretty crap at it, but everyone else were having extraordinary results, and even seeing other stuff that David hadn't seen. And what they then did is went away and started looking at the local henges. Now, a henge effectively is a circle. It has been reappropriated in many places. There's one in Dorset that's got a church sitting right in the middle of it. This is Bullring Henge, and the other one on the other side is Arbor, which is up near Tim. And what they found, with what they'd learned from the Earth Energies group, was that they could also see eyes in the ditches and try and understand why they were there. And with my sort of energy stroke telecoms head on it, and looking at electricity and everything else, hang on a minute, doesn't that look like a junction box? So when we start to look at the cables and an eye, what we realized was that the eyes were the cross section of the cable. It doesn't have to be circular. and it could be 3 different cables coming into the sides. And I've seen a post recently where someone's done aerial photography of Giza and Mexico, like Chichen Itza or the Pyramid of the Moon and various other locations, and saying, well, that's a circuit board. Look at that compared to a silicon circuit board. And the similarities are amazing. Can you call that synchronicity or coincidence? I don't know. Now, it could be that we're completely on the wrong different track. But what we're seeing is evidence that makes us think, well, this could be something that we've completely lost. Is this the free energy debate that is there? Is this something else that we need to explore? Is this the original internet for communication? It could be all sorts. So we're starting to explore this discussion. But we also found other stuff with Avebury as well, which is really interesting. Different energy lines going different paths and the different circles. And the interesting one here, if you see on the right-hand side, is the flower. There was 2 of us dowsing on the sun circle stone, and Paul, his name was picking up petals of a flower, and I was doing the same, and we found that we were actually absolutely bang on, the 2 of us, so we were validating each other. And then he started picking up another symbology within the etheric, which was a Maltese cross. And it was a really good piece of dowsing, and also an education to both of us to make sure you get your questions right. Because he picked up and he said, oh, the cross is red. And I was going, no, the cross is green. And he was going, no, the cross is red. And I'm going, no, it's green. And then he went, are we dowsing the same cross? We both dowsed it and we got, no. How many crosses? 3. And he said, well, what colour's the 3rd cross then? And I said pink and he said pink at the same time. So we actually hadn't got our questions right. So it was an education to us, but also, as I say to everybody, when you're dowsing, you really got to get that question without ambiguity, so that you're not making mistakes or you're going down the wrong rabbit hole. So one of the things we're starting to, as conclusions, is there are clear relationships in the landscape that are going on. There's things are changing and evolving, and you could say some new features are coming to the fore, or old features are becoming more visible to us because we've lost it, and we're now beginning to realize how to tune in again and see and get rid of the conditioning that we've had for the last 2,000 years. Disparate features may actually be connected. So just because you can see 3 henges on the landscape, but you can't see a road between them, doesn't mean they're not connected. There might be something in the etheric or in the earth energies or in space or whatever else. And there's still information hidden in the past that we've done. Now, the one thing I just forgot to mention, with the sun circle, when we were doing that dowsing and Paul and I were getting the flowers, then suddenly I saw that the obelisk that used to be there, the 23-foot stone that was there, that's been removed, was actually the intergalactic connection point to through Birkeland currents to the wider grid outside of the planet, the planetary grids and everything else. So that's spurned another set of conversations that we're having, and a conversation that I've started having with a gentleman by the name of Robert Temple, who's written a most fascinating book called The New Science of Heaven. And I would recommend all of you to go and have a read of that book, because it really starts to explain dowsing in a lot of senses. It's all about quantum and plasma and that connection. And there's the primary connection point into Earth, which is Avebury. And everyone's been talking about heart chakras and everything else of the planet. So it's opened up a completely another area, which is why I say our title is Earth Energies, but we're now going off planet, which is quite an interesting one when you start to realize that everything is connected. So if you want to join the course, there's the details. It's actually on tomorrow evening. All you need to do is email me or Chris, and I'll make sure you're added to it. The conversations tomorrow, I don't know if they're looking at the agenda. It's more about where does the Earth Energies group go. Chris has been the steward and chair for the last 2 years, really, and done an amazing job, absolutely amazing. But it may be just a bit too much for him now, I don't know, or it just needs some more input and everything else. In a lot of senses, it's a really good point of like-minded individuals to get together once a month and prove you're not mad, which is why we enjoy it. So yeah, I'm happy with questions, and leave it to you guys.
You've got a question, unmute and ask it. I know I've got a question. Maybe I'll start us off. I was struck, Paul, when you were showing when you were talking about the eyes, and that one slide where it had the Avebury circles are drawn out. I mean, it actually looks like the structure of an eye with, you know, rods and cones and the connections, you know, into the brain. I mean, that was quite fascinating. But when you were saying that they were seeing eyes in the ditches, what were they seeing?
They were seeing this etheric eye sort of sitting in the air in the ditch. So they weren't anywhere else. They were in the ditch, but they were not on the sides or anything. They were floating. And what has also been seen, one of the team now, she's seen that she found an earth energy lay coming in on a beach down in Spain, and she was able to view it as an eye looking at the cross section. So we're seeing it outside of the henges now on the earth energy lays, but I think David Charman is the gentleman who can teach you how to see, and he reckons everyone has that ability. I'm still learning, but we're finding it in many different places now. But the first location seems to be it's templated within the ditches of the various henges that we have. But again, a lot of our henges have been destroyed. So the ditches were one of the first things which would go. But Avebury is massive as a ditch. So, you know, Stonehenge had a ditch, but it hasn't anymore. So it's interesting to see what is there or what might be happening.
Thanks, Paul. Who else has got a question? Tim.
Tim?
Sorry, trying to unmute myself. Just on that eye thing, presumably you're using the eye. What you're saying is the eye. It's symbolic. That's the shape, but it's not actually. I mean, sensitives aren't saying that it's actually a viewing device. It's actually just representative of the shape of the energy within when you're looking at the cross section.
We don't think we're being watched, but you know, it's like the cross section. But it's interesting that it seems to all be at one point. You know, if you went outside the ditch, you can't see it. If you try and look in, you can't see it. It's inside the henge, you see it. Yeah. But has it been disconnected, or we're just being allowed to see a component of it? Because again, if you think outside the 2D and the 3D, what we're finding is that those cables potentially are going into the center, and then they're going up, and they're going down, and they're going in different directions. And the down isn't necessarily always into Earth. What I saw from the sun circle, for instance, they were down, but they were going off planet, straight out. So it was like everything was changing. You know, our understanding of reality was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think what your group is definitely working towards is that is basically identifying the structures of the form that our reality takes. So the process of this amazing system that we're in, this feedback loop, working with all of the aspects of earth energy that you've described, which is absolutely brilliant in terms of really itemizing the structure of what's this bloody thing that we're living in. This is amazing. Yeah. And our point in it, which is fantastic. The work with trees that you're doing there is brilliant. I've not heard of beacon trees before, but it makes a lot of sense. And I don't know whether there's a site.
On a Zoom call thing.
There's a site. I can't remember. It's an archaeological site. It's not a wood henge, but there was an ancient sacred site that was unearthed in East Anglia or somewhere like this, Paul, where the ancients had basically taken a tree with its root system and inverted it so that the roots were up the other way. Right now, what you're saying about the fact that they've got energy emitting when they're alive, being going so far much further into the earth. You can imagine the ancients thinking, right, well, what we'll do is we'll take one of those, we'll turn it upside down, and that's the transmitter. It's going to be far more powerful. Fantastic job, and it's like, well, I think it's brilliant, really good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a powerful thing, and one of the other things that I get shown quite a lot is the history of place. So I was in Bath and kept being drawn by spirit back to this hill. And for all sorts of reasons, daughters' cars and people there wanting me to do autodowns. And in the end, I stood on the hill and I said to the management, tell me why I'm here. Show me what you need me to know. And then I was given the 10,000 years of the history of the place and the hill and everything else. And part of that was the wooden circle that was on there 7,000 or 8,000 years ago. And then that progressed over 2,000 years to the stone circle that was there, and then it changed when the Romans came. And I phoned up Rory and I said, look, I'm here on this hill, I know where the two nodes are they where you pick them up? And sure enough, my stuff that I was being shown from the management was bang on to what he's been dowsing for 15 years. So it's interesting how the shift had happened as well, because we got the history shift from where the ceremonial site was on the top of Alexandra Park, on top of the Lincoln Hill, which is hundreds of feet above where the Roman baths are below. So again, it was understanding that progression from wood to stone. And maybe that was because of land clearance, and maybe it's because the age of trees. The trees we see now are children. They are not the great-grandparents or anything else. We're very lucky that we've got oak trees 1,000 years old. And we've got yew trees 2,500 years old. You're very lucky in America. You've got Methuselah, which is 5,000 years old. So you've got some extraordinary trees. And there's the aspen grove, I think, as well, which is 2,000 to 3,000 years old. It's the largest known living organism in the world. But again, that's us humans not understanding actually what else it's doing. Could it be working on an earth energy point? Is it doing more work that we're not really respecting or understanding? So I'd say go and douse them, go and find out, go with an open mind and see what you get.
There's an interesting story here on Vancouver Island, so in kind of, the southern tip in Victoria, and when colonizers first landed, and there was a healing spring, and beside that was a huge big tree, and the colonizers decided to cut the tree down, and the spring dried up. Yeah,
and that's the beacon tree. But I bet you if you go there, you will still find the energy node where the tree was, and that's the beacon tree, and that would have been the symbiotic relationship between the water and the energy.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary thing when you start to see just how amazing nature is.
So my Vancouver Island peeps, I might take you. Field trip.
Go and douse it. I'll send. You've got the information there, but I'll give you more info about beacon trees and what they are, but also understanding trees outside of that. Signpost trees, great grandparent trees, and things. They have so many different roles that they can teach us.
One of the interesting things there has just struck me is that because we're human, we so often look at things and we say, well, it's amazing that trees are doing this and they're transmitting, energies and blah. And of course it is amazing. But if we think about it, they're bound to be, aren't they? Because it's all part of consciousness.
Yes.
Consciousness. It's on exactly the same level. All of these wonderful trees are on exactly the same level as us. There is no difference between us and the trees. It's just that we think it's amazing because nobody told us. It's like, yeah, of course.
I'm just bringing my iPad over because I'm going to read something out to you, which when I was writing that slide deck with the guys on the Earth Energies thing, and I was pulling it together, I had a bit of a download from the universe, which was on consciousness, and the individuality. Yes. I'll read it out to everyone because it's something you should take whenever you're doing dowsing. And I applied this. We have two principal earth energy lays called the Michael and the Mary line that run from the tip of Cornwall all the way up to top of Norfolk. And they follow an astronomical lay. And I know we have this whole debate about ley lines, and you probably have them in America. And I like Sig Longren's definition than the Alfred Watkins one, where you have an astronomical lay, you have topographical lay, which is the line you can see, and you have the energy lay that moves around and everything else. And we have one well, we have several in Britain, but the Michael and Mary follow this astronomical line to the sunrise of Beltane morning, May the 8th, give or take. And it joins up several hundred locations, sacred locations like Stonehenge, Avebury, Glastonbury, Boroughmunt, all the way down to St Michael's Mount and Hobson's Church. And then there's these two dragon lines, snake lines, following it up. But I was writing the slide deck up, and this literally, I just started writing this slide, and it's a conversation I had with Robert Temple, Professor Robert Temple. And I would suggest you guys take it on board in a lot of senses of how you dowse, because it will hopefully help you open up your mindset. Everything is energy. Energy can have consciousness. Not all consciousness has self-realization. However, consciousness can have a direction, a purpose, be alive, have shape and form. Consciousness can be influenced, directed, programmed, changed, moved, used. This can be deliberate or accidental. We're all part of it. We're all one. When you start to understand it that way, it's common sense. But trying to get that leap is an interesting one. And that whole Earth Energies conference, just a story that came out of there. I lived fairly close to Avebury. I'm about an hour away, and I was umming and ahhing, shall I go and stay there or what, get a B&B or whatever? And in the end, I thought, sorry, I'm going to go and splash out, have somewhere to stay, and I won't have to keep traveling upwards and backwards and forwards. And so I booked a B&B through Airbnb. Little did I know that this was the house in the dead centre of Avebury, between the moon and the sun circle. So I walk in there and I meet the guy who's doing it, and he goes, I've checked you out. I know all about what you do. And I went, oh, how's that? He said, oh, I've looked at your website and everything. I said, all right. He said, you and me are on the same path. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I'm actually the archdruid of Avebury. So we both started having a conversation, and Henk and I realized there's lots of past life stuff between the two of us, and we're really, really good friends now. And the other week he phoned me up and he said, I'm having problems at the house, and I'd already done some healing with his partner and stuff. And he said, there's all sorts of things kicking off. Can you tune in and see what's going on? So I remotely tuned in and found that the Michael and the Mary line going, it's an interesting term. We say they cross, but I actually like the term that someone else has used, is that the lines kiss. They come together and kiss in the moon circle and in the sun circle. And they were going straight under his house. And obviously the energy of these two very powerful lines was causing all sorts of stuff to happen. So I tuned in, and I remembered this individual of this consciousness download that I had. And I went, right, well, wonder if their consciousness, can I tune into them and talk to them? And sure enough, I started having conversation with the Michael line and saying, right, okay, can I work with you to bring you into balance and harmony with the house? And he said, no. And I said, why? He said, well, actually, we don't control all the influences that are affecting us. So we're actually, open to all sorts of things that are going on. Other people are going to different sacred sites and dowsing and doing energy work there, and this is happening and that's happening, and, a compressor might be going on over there while they dig a hole and things. We can't do it. And as much as we'd love to, we can't. And I went, oh, okay. I said, is there anything you can control? And he said, yes. I said, what about your route? And he said, yes, we can control that. I said, great. So can you then move yourself around the house so you weren't causing this problem? Still kiss in the moon circle and the sun circle, but leave his house out of it. And sure enough, the Mary went one side, the Michael went the other, and they joined back again. And when I was dowsing there a little while ago, I went and checked, and sure enough, they're still there. They've gone round the house. So again, we do this in geomancy work where we're talking to the lines, and we ask Mother Nature to move a line or move a portal or whatever else. But what I'm realizing, Mother Nature's is just might be the intermediary. Talk to the line, talk to the portal, ask the management to work with you to have that connection and make the change. So even that conversation has gone back into the Zoom group, and people are now beginning to realize this is even weirder and more amazing than we even possibly imagined 2 years ago. So it's a fascinating element to look at. So I would counsel all of you, start thinking everything is conscious, no matter what you're dealing with. There's just different levels of it, and you might start to have some extraordinary results.
I love that. Speaking my language, Paul.
Grand stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's also, what's lovely is that it's all, the theme of your talk really is, you're asking the question all the time, is this new discoveries? Are these new discoveries, or are we unearthing the old knowledge? And really, fundamentally, it's, we definitely, in all as we travel our individual paths and collectively our paths, we are unearthing the known wisdom, but bringing it to the fore. And that's the really exciting thing, is to actually realize that we're really connecting in a very modern way, a very modern understanding to the very fundamentals of what and who we are and what we are universally. The interesting thing that you were saying about the sun circle connecting and Avery connecting to the universe, when I was there some years ago, I got a very, very strong connection to Neptune, which was a bit odd, but I have no idea what the significance of Neptune is, but that was really strong at that time. But I mean, that was, oh heavens, goodness me, and now we're talking, that would be 12 years ago. So
it could be several things, and the one thing that people are beginning to realize with Avebury, it's an extraordinary place, because it's an astrological and an astronomical calendar. And Alexander Keeler, who did some of the excavations, really screwed some of it up, because he saw these ditches in the bank on one side and decided to fill them all up. Well, actually, those are the sighting points from the stones to Neptune, to Jupiter, to Sirius, etc., when they were coming up over the horizon at certain times of the year. So it was allowing them to use it as a calendar and also to measure time and to measure stuff. But on some other parts of the ditches, you can still see those sighting points. So when you see the sunrise on the summer solstice, it's bang on there, but you no longer have the sunstone. See, because the sunstone, the 23-foot obelisk, would then cast a shadow on a certain other stone at certain periods of time and everything else. So it's been very broken. But as again, you go there and start to understand this and how it works, and then what's the relationship between that calendar and these eyes and the cables? These are questions that we still need to go and explore. But you'll have the same thing wherever you live. Go and look on the maps, go and look in the landscape, start asking these questions, and God knows what you might find. You might be the next chapter that we're missing.
I'm just conscious of time. Anybody got any questions that they want to ask Paul? It's been really fascinating. Inspired me in many ways.
Well, I'll send you the slide decks, and I'll send you this illusion of individuality slide as well. Because I think that will help people.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, how do we look for the beacon tree?
In one sense, you can dowse it. Be it on a map or something like that, do some map dowsing and ask the question, where is the local one to you? Now, we found primarily over here, they're oak trees. Now, I don't know if you have oak trees there. And that's why you tend to see an oak tree is the first tree that gets hit by lightning, because they have that energy run. But we're now seeing these starting to expand into yew trees and other trees now. But the other side of the coin, if you start to connect with trees, you'll start to feel them. So you'll be driving along the road and you'll just know that there's a beacon tree there, and then just pull over and again douse it and trying to connect to the tree that way. And that's how a lot of us are finding them. We just are getting that that knowing. The tree is now saying, well, we actually want to start engaging with you again. for several thousand years, they didn't want to engage with us because we were just being stupid. But then they started to want to talk to us again, and that's the thing to do. Start having that connection. You might find that you've got a relationship with a tree you like sitting with or going with anyway. Then ask it if it's a beacon tree and see what happens, or ask it to show you where the next beacon tree is.
That's a good idea. Yeah, because where I'm being drawn to woods. Fortunately, in Devon, we've got quite a few, and yeah. So I've been this morning, and I'm just spending hours in there taking pictures of this, that, and the other. So maybe I'll take my rods up there and ask.
Yeah, whereabouts in Devon are you?
Wimpole, just outside of Exeter, east of Exeter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, my daughter's at Exeter Uni, so I'm down there quite regularly. So I'm more than happy to come out with you and show you. And
excellent! Come and have a cup of tea.
Yeah. Are you part of the Devon Dowsers down there?
Yes, I'm part of Devon and Somerset. I crossed the border, so yes, because we lost the delightful Matt French a few years ago.
Yeah, so, Matt and I were good friends, so I'm sad to see him go. I knew he was ill, and I just didn't get in touch with him. The universe was telling me to get in touch, and I didn't, and I really regret that.
It was all very quick, Paul. So
yeah.
Bless him. But yes, thank you. I will take my rods up and have a look.
No, email me. Just email me. Paul@spiritman.me.
Yeah, I took a picture earlier.
Fab.
Thank you.
And so, Paul, you said you'll send us the slides. We can pop those in our Facebook group and put me down for the Earth Energies group. I will definitely send you an email about that. So what a great talk. Tim, I will let you close us out.
Yeah, look, Tim, what you've got me into.
Yeah. That was great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming along. It's been very nice to reconnect with you after all this time as well, on a personal level. So thank you for that. Do have a successful visit to your... I'm going to mention this. Do have a successful visit to your hospital tomorrow and the subsequent recovery.
Yeah, I'm having heart surgery, everyone, so I'm having my own wiring circuit resorted tomorrow. So
send Paul all your best wishes and all your healing, supportive vibes, everybody, please, over the next few weeks. It's part of Paul's life at the moment, sent by the management, but there you go. Classic. Thank you very, very much indeed. I think actually that's going to segue rather nicely with the speaker that you have lined up for next month, Dawn, as well.
Yes, we've got Emma Farrell, and she's coming to talk about plant and tree consciousness and the work that she does with that. So I'm super excited about that as well. So that's our January speaker.
That's an interesting conversation.
Yeah,
because Emma and I have just connected over the last 4 weeks because she's coming to do 2 of the dowsing groups. And I went on a Zoom call with her for 5 minutes just so we got to talk and introduce each other. 2 hours later, we were still talking and finding the synchronicity between her awakening journey and mine. Yeah, so Emma and I have sort of gone bang. And she lives with another friend of mine, which I didn't realise, who actually hosts a lot of the beacon tree conversations, and they're both what we would call tree guardians, which I am now. So that's an interesting one because I'm meeting Emma properly next Friday if I get out of hospital and recover properly. So that'd be lovely.
She is phenomenal. So I'm super excited about that. So more synchronicities there. We're just gathering these folks together.
Yeah, excellent, good. So thank you. Sorry to interrupt your flow there, Dawn and Paul. I didn't mean to just stick my oar in. No. But yeah, let's pull it to a close. But thank you so much. And I will be dropping you an email because I would like to get involved in that group as well, because it's very, very important that we do. So anyone else that wants to, then do. Paul, you should try and get involved with our group more on a more regular basis as well when you've got time in it.
I would love to. I'd love to. Send me the link to the Facebook group and I'd love to get involved with that as well. I've got to get off my backside, as you and I have had that conversation last week, to be more out there.
Yes, we did.
Can you say what you said about everything having consciousness, Paul, that you'd written. Could you send that to Tim or to our group, please? Because I think that would be really good in our house healing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hoping to. I've got the book. The book is waiting for me to collect. Robert Temple's book. I'm hoping that I can persuade him to come onto my YouTube channel and we can have a chat as well. So very exciting what he's doing. I mean, let's face it, really, really exciting times. All in all, we just need to connect some of our dots that we have scattered all over the place. So.
I was very lucky to spend about 2 hours with him at an exhibition at a conference, the Maria Wheatley one at Avebury, and I went and chatted to him and told him a few things that happened to me. And the next thing, we were sitting down for 2 hours talking over coffee. He's an extraordinary individual. So yeah, I'm staying in touch with him as well now.
So don't forget, stay involved with the network because it's all happening here.
Yeah.
Go Dawn.
And happy holidays, everybody. It's that time of year. I hope you have a good, peaceful, restful, joyful time. And we'll see you in January 2023, folks.
Great. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.